Hello and thanks for joining us. This is the What Now. We begin in the United States, where the United States military has struck the western Yemeni fuel port of Ras Issa on the 17th of April. Houthi-affiliated Al Jazeera TV shared footage of what appeared to be the aftermath of the strike. The airstrikes on a key oil terminal, Yemen's Red Sea coast, controlled by the Houthi movement, have killed at least 58 people and wounded 126 others. The Houthi-led government that runs northwestern Yemen said the terminal was a civilian facility and that the attack constituted a full-fledged war crime. It was one of the deadliest incidents since President Donald Trump ordered U.S. forces to intensify their bombing campaign last month in response to Houthi attacks on Red Sea shipping and Israel linked to the Gaza war. Several hours after the strikes on Ras Issa, the Israeli military said it had intercepted a missile launched from Yemen. U.S. President Donald Trump has launched a series of attacks against Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell, accusing the central bank chief of playing politics by not cutting interest rates, asserting he had the power to evict Powell from his job real fast, and looking forward to the day when Powell was gone. Powell's termination as federal chair cannot come fast enough, the president said in morning comments posted on social media. President Trump's post also said the Fed should be cutting interest rates and called a recent Powell speech about the economy a complete mess. President Trump expanded in a later press appearance that reflected how the Fed's decisions could weigh on the president's fortunes. Now, interest rates on home mortgages and other consumer credit remain high, for example, and the Fed is likely to offer little relief now that inflation risks are rising in the wake of Trump's tariff plans.
The only thing that's gone up actually is interest rates, because we have a Federal Reserve Chairman that is playing politics, somebody that I've never been very fond of, actually. But he's playing politics. Interest rates should be down now. They should be coming down. In Europe, as you know, they reduced them, I guess 7 times. It looks like they're going to reduce them again and again and again. But our guy wants to play cute. But interest rates are pretty much even. Maybe they went up just a slight bit, but that's the only thing. But that's because of the Federal Reserve, because they're not very smart people.
And staying in the U.S., reports indicate that the Trump administration is considering the closure of up to 10 embassies and 17 consulates around the world, many of them in Europe and Africa. Trump's plan to close U.S. embassies around the world is part of a broader push to slash the U.S. federal budget, spearheaded by a new government efficiency office. Since returning to the White House, President Trump has spared sweeping tariff hikes with moves to shrink the American diplomatic footprint. Among the embassies earmarked for closure are those in the Central African Republic, Congo, Eritrea, Gambia, Lesotho, and South Sudan. The consulates in Douala, Cameroon, and Durban, South Africa are also on the list. The internal memo also suggests scaling down diplomatic operations in Iraq and Somalia, 2 countries where the U.S. has had a heavy presence for decades. Now, global affairs analyst Collins Awaken joins me live from Belgium. Good to have you join us.
My pleasure always to be here with you, Precious. Thank you for having me.
So, I mean, President Trump's recent moves, and we're hearing that the military presence in Africa will also be greatly reduced. It will look like a sudden and very messy breakup with the whole continent, do you think?
Well, that's exactly what it is, and that is indeed consistent with the America First agenda that Donald Trump pushed before the Americans, and indeed, overwhelmingly, it was accepted. I mean, in terms of being elected president. So, what we see happening is actually unleashing the contents of that America First. Now, like you mentioned, the purpose is essentially to, cut down on, the budget of, America. There is high spending, according to him. And so, cutting down on the budget and making things more efficient, in his own words, are the goal. But it's not with, and they might achieve, such fiscal advantage, but it's not without some drawbacks because America's standing, global standing in the world might be affected by this, and the long-term implications, depends on how they are implemented. I mean, these changes, and whether alternative strategies are developed to, maintain essential diplomatic functions that will affect, America's citizens. So there's a whole lot of wait and see, Precious.
And I know you already talked about or touched on the declining U.S. hegemony, around the world. But this particular move to reduce U.S. diplomatic footprint in Africa could also further diminish Americans' influence, not just on the continent. We also know that Europe has been affected. I mean, talk to us about the broader implication of this for the U.S.
Yes, indeed. There is a very, very real danger of America's influence in the world actually diminishing as a consequence of, these changes in the diplomatic landscape that Donald Trump is instituting. Now, it is no secret to anyone that China has a very, very, high global ambition. And America has been very, very wary of this. And so what China has been doing is essentially the opposite of what Donald Trump has announced, which is, increasing its presence, China's presence in the world, particularly in Africa. Now, imagine a situation where China is increasing its presence, America is actually reducing its presence. So it does mean that China's global influence on the rest of the world using soft power and the rest of them will actually be accelerated, while that of the United States is declining. Russia also has its own ambition as well. You see what is playing out around BRICS, that group of economic, bloc. And so, these are opportunities for them. So as America closes its door, BRICS, with China, Russia, even Turkey will be opening new doors, and that will not be in America's best interest. But Africa might have something to gain here, as a matter of fact.
And that's how I was going next, because the knee-jerk reaction from African leaders will be naturally to buy into Trump's transactional diplomacy and then look for leverage to negotiate with. But doesn't this also sort of present a very rare opportunity to engage as sovereign partners and equals?
Yes, it does. And African leaders have got to be, very smart and very pragmatic about this. And I think America is sensitive because don't forget, Precious, that a few weeks ago, maybe about a month or so ago, Donald Trump has already indicated that, those who are romancing around BRICS, will be penalized by the United States of America. And that is because they see this coming. So, indeed, African leaders have got to do, a neat analysis and then balance their relationship with different worlds. They don't owe they shouldn't owe any allegiance to the United States of America. Since, Donald Trump is, rather transactional, they've got to match him up with that transactionalism because it is in Africa's best interest to relate with whoever brings the best advantage to the table. And since Trump is leading America to voluntarily withdraw, African leaders should take the best advantage, that other countries present to them in the, in terms of countries like Turkey, Russia, and with China, as a matter of fact. So yes, Africa has quite a lot to gain by reassessing their position as well.
And I just want to follow up on what you said in terms of Africa, how Africa will engage, because now that we see a shift in global politics, especially with Trump, isn't it time for Africa to sort of change its diplomatic principle of neutrality, where, especially for countries like Nigeria, South Africa seems to be very much out there. But to say, look, neutrality, to move from neutrality, which means that, look, we're not going to get involved, and move to the original plan that Tafawa Balewa had, which was independence, which means that our viewpoint and how we engage is not going to be influenced by any party?
I do believe that the next decade in African diplomacy is definitely going to be a mix of both independence, but also, diplomatic ambiguity where they are neither here nor there. I do think it's a very smart thing because that way they are able to, sit on the fence, let things play out, and then go to which side that actually favors them. But it's not to be done in the Tafawa Balewa, style or strategy of being independent in terms of establishing what the diplomatic objectives is. And for Nigeria, for instance, it is concentratism, whereby they concentrate on Africa as the centerpiece of their foreign policy, and from there, they approach the rest of the world. So I would see, an emergence of a new diplomatic landscape in Africa where independence meets neutrality, in terms of, diplomatic ambiguity, to be able to then achieve their ultimate goal.
Really interesting conversation with you. Thank you so much for your time, as always. Always a pleasure to have you on. Collins Oweke, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Right, you're watching The World Now. We'll take a break and return.